Well, aren't you a regular Nancy Drew?
I learned that from the Nancy Drew detective.
Okay, go.
You think you can follow the clues and solve the case of the missing condiment, Nancy Drew?
Because I've read every Nancy Drew mystery ever written.
Nancy, please tell me you're joking.
Wow, you suck at this Nancy Drew stuff. You should get a new hobby.
My name is Carson Drew, and this is my assistant, Nancy.
Nancy Drew.
It's curtains for you, Miss Drew.
Nancy Drew strikes again.
A regular Nancy Drew.
Well, hello, regular Drews.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome to episode 82. What are we talking about today, Kori?
The 2007 Emma Roberts movie. I think you said this last time, but this has been like our most requested episode for a long, long time now. So this is very exciting.
Yeah. I think so. It's really been a long time coming, at least like personally, because this movie, which came out in 2007, was like my mothership. Like,
right?
I can't even describe to you the hype that I had and still have in a lot of ways for this movie.
Oh yeah.
So this came out like I think probably in like the peak of our Nancy Drew fervor when we were young. And so yeah.
We were definitely the target audience here. I think we were 12 years old when this came out, were we not? Or 12 or 13, somewhere around there. I don't
13,
remember what month it came out. But yeah, so we were who this was for. And so we ate it up big time back then and still a little bit do today.
Yes. There's something very nostalgic about it. It's very much a teen movie. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Maybe a little preteen movie too. But yeah, that whole vibe was like, it was just like peak early aughts, man. And yeah, just so nostalgic to watch it now. Not to say that I think it's perfect, because I definitely don't. And there are definitely choices that I think that were made that I don't really agree with. Especially not now. Of course, I can't put myself back into my 13-year-old body and think about it as if I was 13, thankfully for your sake, regular Drews. You probably don't want to hear a podcast from my mind as a 13-year-old, but I can only think about it now, as I am now and today. And I can definitely see a lot of issues with it that I think I probably didn't see back then. A little more of a nuanced opinion now,
sure.
I think. Yeah.
I do remember going to see this in theaters in 2007, and I do remember walking away with a few criticisms, and I will say that rewatching it this time, I do still feel the same way about those specific things, but otherwise, it's a great movie.
Yeah.
It's cute. It's fun.
Yeah. It is, okay, cute is such a word to describe it too. Honestly, cute maybe should be one of our 3 words because it is so adorable. And I, not just like, in the vibe of like, oh, it's a cute preteen movie. I mean, like the clothes, the style, like the set design, the art design, just so cute. So, I mean, beautiful too. Like, I don't want to be like diminutive. It is very beautiful and very well done. And I think definitely whoever had their hands in that is just knew what they were doing.
Oh yeah.
Because it's very cool and very reminiscent of, the mystery stories and the 30s and the 50s, probably more so the 50s.
Definitely. Yeah, they were trying to draw from the revised text, I think.
Yeah. So beautiful, so cute. Such a good concept, I think, as far as art direction goes. I think from what I remember that there was like some criticism of the plot for being kind of like simple and like stereotypical, like a simple mystery, like
really?
It's not really, I feel like I remember that, but or it's just like not being like complex or interesting, like kind of corny and cheesy.
I mean,
but
it's a mystery story.
That's the thing. It's like I feel like that's accurate, first of all. And second of all, I think that the mystery made more sense and did a better job, I think, than probably the majority of the mystery stories as far as like coherency goes. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I actually thought that the mystery was the strongest point of the whole
Oh,
movie. I mean, it really is like a good homage to the mystery stories. We've got this like historical mystery that it's gonna present day, it's gonna result in the like wholesome happy ending. But then we
right.
also have the tropes of like the nasty bad guys and the perfect amount of spooks and secret passageways. Like it definitely embodies what a mystery story should be. And so I really thought that that was a strong point.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, the whole nostalgia of it is its strong point, is its selling point, is that it does harken so well back to the revised text, just with the whole vibe of it, you know, with of course all of the, you know, not like the stereotypical aspects of it, right? Like hidden passageways, like you were talking about,
Yeah.
but also I think in the way that they present this idea of what Nancy Drew is, I think they do that really well. I think my only and my biggest, I mean, not my only, but my biggest critique of it as a movie is that there's something about it that I think feels a little bit snide, like kind of mocking.
Okay.
And I'm not 100% sure where I get that impression from. I think it has to do with the way that they place Nancy in LA, and everybody else kind of makes fun of Nancy, right? Nancy is like this fish out of water. Like she's considered like quote unquote weird. And the teens there don't like her.
Right.
And so she's played in contrast with them quite strongly. And while I do think that the movie also kind of criticizes those youth who are criticizing Nancy, I don't think they make it obvious enough that we should be championing Nancy.
Right.
And not, you know, maybe these other representations of kids at the time. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like, oh yeah, Nancy's weird. And that's just kind of what the movie says.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah, so I just felt like it's just a little bit mocking of her and her character. And it felt like it was maybe made by someone who didn't really like her, like didn't really like Nancy, which is a little weird to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what you think about that, Kori.
That was one of my complaints as well.
Yeah.
Actually, I took a lot of notes on my issues with the movie here, and so I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent here, but I can go through it real quick.
Too soon. Okay.
Well, no, I mean, I guess it's appropriate to do it now rather than like during the summary, but yeah, I don't want to sound like I'm critiquing it too much because again, the mystery itself, I thought that it's a good movie. Some of my issues here. Number one, I hate Corky. I absolutely hate him. I think that boy has a lot that he needs to learn about consent in his future, first of all. But second, I don't really understand why he's here in the in the movie. I don't understand why they put him in as a character. I feel like, okay, and this is where my tangent is going to go off a little bit, but I feel like the mystery genre is so broad in and of itself that for movies, it's really hard to land exactly on the spectrum of where they're trying to land, if that makes sense. Because if I Google like mystery movie, I can see anything from like pure horror, psychological thriller, all the way to like forensic investigation procedurals to like buddy cop movie, right? And so the trend with Nancy Drew, and I think that maybe even one of the like misses that the Benita Granville movies make is that they try to go too far into the like pure children's comedy aspect of the mystery genre and trying to go into this whole subset, which I mean, obviously, it's a children's book. It's a children's movie. The audience is, but that's not news. Obviously, it's a children's book. But Nancy Drew she's never childish. you know? And so I feel like that's one of the traps that this movie falls into, is pulling Corky in as like, okay, for some reason, we've decided that we need this like slapstick comedic relief character. And I just don't think that it works as well as intended. Because if you remember, the Benigni Granville movies also had the like, it was like Nancy's Neighbor or something, the like younger children that tag along and they have to sing a song halfway through. And it's just like, this, it's like too much of like a modern day retelling of that like comedy type of movie that was the popular thing in the 30s.
Well, that's such a good point too, because like when I think about like me as a child reading the Nancy Drew books, like there was no part of that where I was reading it through like a comedic lens. Like I wasn't reading that and being like, oh, what a funny story.
Right.
I'm like, no, like I'm engaged. Like this is a serious business mystery story. Like Nancy's in danger and I get to go along with her, you know? I'm not laughing at it. Like, I mean, there might be like some jokes, but it's not like, that's not why I'm reading it.
Right. It's not a comedy by any means.
No. And yeah, you're totally right that is where a lot of the Nancy Drew adaptions end up leaning.
Is it almost every movie? Because the Sophia Lillis movie is not quite as much as this, but I would still say that it's closer than like, you know, the Pamela Sue Martin show. That's not comedy at all. But, well, maybe except the Maggie Lawson movie, all of them kind of tend to lean this comedy direction. And if you remember the Benita Granville, like she got cast as Nancy Drew because her reputation in the movie industry prior to this was that she played the quote unquote brat role. So it was like funny that she was like, you know, standing up to adults and like acting out and all this kind of stuff. And I just don't feel like that's Nancy.
Yes.
Again, I know it's a children's book, but Nancy as a character is never childish. And when I was reading these books as a child, I never felt like the books were talking down to me because I'm a child. Obviously, reading them today, yes, the mysteries are pretty simple. We can figure out where it's going pretty easily. But as a child, I never felt like, oh, this feels like a kid's book and they're dumbing this down for me because I'm a child. I always felt like the author really respected that, you know, kids are smarter than we give them credit for, kind of thing. And so I think that was just kind of a miss.
I think so. I mean, like it definitely, now that you say that, it definitely feels like how a parent would look down upon the content that their child is reading. And I think it reminds me of that quote, like, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And so, yeah, it definitely feels like a mocking, like they're laughing because it's like not serious, you know what I mean? Where it's like to kids, no, it's serious. It's really serious. And not in like a bad way, but in like this is what we're reading it because it's a mystery and because it's serious and engaging, not because it's comedy. And so, yeah, it's really interesting to think that people who are making it are probably adults making it and looking back at Nancy Drew and how they look at it now instead of thinking about how they looked at it when they were young or how kids are looking at it now. Yeah, interesting.
So that brings me up to my next point, because you kind of mentioned the two mean girls that we have in the movie. I feel like the characterization of Nancy was off, and you've pretty much already said this, but obviously the intention here was to pay homage to like the 1950s fashion and to like give her all of those fun things that we remember from the books. But the outcome, unfortunately, was that it made Nancy an outcast, which was never the case in the books. Nancy is very much like, she's very congenial. She's kind of Miss Popular a little bit. And so I just feel like the mean girls roles were just completely unnecessary. We could have easily just put Bess and George there instead and have them tag along for the mystery. Nancy, when she struggles in the books, it's never with her peers. Like, it's usually like adult men, whether that's like upstaging the police in some way or her literal struggles with the bad guys. But I'm thinking specifically of like the Topham sisters in Old Clock when they like try to embarrass Nancy in public. She has no problem just like going about her day, being the bigger person. Exactly. This, they like make a point to embarrass her, and then we see Nancy kind of like reeling from that hurt. She even like says that at some point. So I just didn't feel like that was really the best way to portray her as a character. I felt like it was taking it in a little bit different direction, which is fine. But My last thing here, Nancy does, of course, struggle with adult men, as I said, but never with Carson, and never in the way that we see the Carson-Nancy dynamic in this movie. I feel like Carson is, of course, in the books, he's, of course, the doting, like, reasonably, he's a concerned father, but like a reasonable level of concern, because Nancy is going off doing dangerous things all the time. But that doesn't, like, make him want to stop her from going and solving the mysteries.
Doesn't make him want to change her.
He implicitly trusts Nancy, and this Carson is like a little bit too helicopter for me, and I feel like that kind of just like throws the balance of the movie off a little bit. Yeah.
Right.
So, okay, that's my tangent.
So that brings me to this theory that I've started to develop.
Okay.
And I got this theory after an episode of Bones. There's an episode of Bones where Bones starts talking about they all like leave for a little while and then they come back. And sorry, everyone, I'm rewatching Bones right now, so it's just on my mind. But she says something about how like there's this, I don't know if this is real or not, but there's like this anthropological theory about how there's like one central figure to a group that essentially allows the group to function and to operate.
Okay.
And she thinks she's that person. It's funny. Anyway, turns out it's not her, it's somebody else. But I think the linchpin to everybody here is not Nancy.
Okay.
I think it's Carson.
That dynamic is really, really important to get right in the show or in the movie.
That's exactly it. Because, like, when I think back to adaptations that I think are good versus bad or, you know, not as good or whatever, the thing that is different in each of those is whether or not I think that they portray Carson well and faithfully. Because, yeah, there is something so important about Carson as a character that I think allows that the rest of it to kind of fall into place in the right way. Because, like, when you think about it, it's like Nancy as a character, which you think, well, probably Nancy is the central figure in that arrangement. I don't think so, because I think that without Carson, Nancy cannot exist. Without Carson being set up in the right way as the right kind of figure, Nancy as a character does not make sense. Because first of all, yes, there's a certain amount of wealth in that, right? Independent wealth. So Nancy doesn't have to be worried about money or a job. She can actually go out and do all of these things that she wants to do freely with no barriers. And that like supportive nature of a father. Like if he weren't supportive of her doing that, she probably would not be able to or would never have been able to get started doing that.
Right.
And so much of it hinges on Carson. So much of Nancy hinges on Carson. And of course, I think everybody else, yes, it has to. And everybody else, of course, you know, kind of rolls down the hill after that. But I think Carson is the most important character.
I love this theory. It makes so much sense. And he is not the supportive father in this movie. I mean, of course, we can tell that he cares about her, but he actively is telling her to stop sleuthing.
I think that I don't think that's the thing that bugs me the most about it. I definitely think that that's an issue. But I think the thing that bugs me the most about Carson's representation in this movie is that they make him kind of dumb.
Oh, yeah.
Like he's like 2 steps behind Nancy all the time. And Nancy's kind of able to like pull the wool over his eyes as far as to like what's going on with the mystery so that she can continue to investigate. But when I think about Carson, first of all, Nancy is 16 in this adaptation. So she's younger, right? Younger than our 18-year-old Nancy. And Carson is like successful defense attorney. And you're telling me that his 16-year-old daughter can run circles around him? Like, maybe in some ways, but as far as like keeping secrets and as far as like her investigation goes, I just don't buy it.
No.
I think so they make him kind of dumb. And then even when they get to this is jumping forward. They get to the end and they're like trying to escape that situation, right? We'll get there, but she's trying to like communicate that to him and he's just not understanding what she's talking about.
That was frustrating.
This is crazy. like how can it be that all this stuff is going on and you're like, what are you talking about, Nancy? Everything's fine. Like, I don't buy it. I think I could see a situation in which Carson asks Nancy not to investigate and not to do that stuff while they're out here in LA and know that she's still going to be doing it.
Yeah. No, he fully believes when she says, no, I haven't been sleuthing. He's like,
Yeah.
great, that's awesome. You would never
like-
lie to me.
You don't, one, you can't tell when your daughter is lying. Two, you don't know your daughter well enough to know that she is gonna sleuth. Like,
Right.
it means either that he's dumb. It means he's dumb, and it means that they don't have a close enough relationship for him to know that, which is not accurate at all. Like,
Right.
it is not faithful. It's not a faithful. I'm not saying it's
Correct.
not accurate. It's not a faithful representation of Carson, in my opinion. So that's why. That's why I don't like it.
Also, they dress him like he's a 1940s news reporter.
Yeah. The fedoras and the trench
scarves.
coat. Yeah.
It's a lot. Anyway.
It is a lot. It is a lot. I feel like when I first saw this, I think the thing that I was irritated the most about is that it was set in LA at all.
Yeah.
And I don't think I have that issue now. I don't think that's a huge issue for me now, because I think a lot of good Nancy Drew adaptions take place in different settings, than River Heights. But I remember being so upset. I was like, I want to see a movie about Nancy in River Heights.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see Nancy in River Heights. And I think that probably a lot of that was me reacting to Nancy being an outsider. And I didn't like that. Yeah. I didn't like it then. I don't like it now.
Oh, wow. I definitely see why for the Hollywood mystery. Like, we love the travel ones, of course, but it would have been nice if we'd seen a little bit more of River Heights to kind of establish who Nancy is as a character, because we really only have that brief scene, and then it's like, whoop, we're in Hollywood.
Yeah. Oh, that brings me to a question. Kori, do you think that this Hollywood mystery of this, old actress who mysteriously died, do you think that that is potentially based off of Natalie Wood and or the Black Dahlia?
No, they've said it. It's Natalie Wood.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it is supposed to be. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know for sure, but I was like, this has got to be Natalie Wood.
Yeah.
Like, just looking at the actress that they got to play Delia, I'm like, that could be Natalie Wood.
Yeah.
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 And I understand why, you would want to make it about this classic kind of Hollywood thing, but it did feel a little bit like, are you just doing this because you're from LA and this is what you're interested in?
As long as it's not disrespectful, which, I mean, they don't use her name or anything like that, so it's not like that, but...
And it's definitely, it's not identical by any means. Like,
no.
It's a very different mystery in very different circumstances, but the inspiration, it's very clear, I think.
Like, that type of mystery, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Anything else you want to say?
I don't think so.
3 words?
I don't think so. Yeah, 3 words.
So cute.
Cute.
I want to say something about her outfit, but that just goes under the cute because she's got all the fun vintage. Yeah.
I think cute. I think we probably have to say Hollywood because it's just so much about it, But then after that, I don't know. I kind of feel like that's kind of all there is to it, is cute in Hollywood. But I mean, you could say something about high school.
Yeah,
or you could say
thinking
something about
weird
Mean
peer
Girls.
dynamics, like with the weird friends and quirky and or just like the Mean Girls going after Ned because they think he's cute, and that's all just very high school and very
yeah.
Okay, so cute high school and Hollywood.
Hollywood high school. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Got it.
Perfect.
Oh. Okay, hold on. This brought something to my mind. Oh, I thought the other day I was going through this. I was like, does this movie pass the Bechdel test?
Oh.
I think it does. But I don't think it does very well. Because I think the only thing that qualifies, the only conversation that may qualify is when for those of you who don't know, you probably know this, a lot of people know this, but the Bechdel test is kind of like this famous theoretical test that you can apply to different movies, basically to see whether or not they aren't super sexist. And so those qualifications are there has to be more than one named female character. They have to speak to each other, and they have to speak to each other about something other than a man.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this only barely passes because of the conversation that Nancy has with the realtor, Barbara.
Okay.
I guess technically she talks to Jane a little bit, but not even that much. And all of the conversations that she has with Inga, the mean girl, are about Ned, pretty much.
Or insults about fashion, which are just like too stereotypically like,
exactly.
This is what girls fight about. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
And she doesn't even have like, there's like a few scenes where she says, not a few scenes, a few lines where she says something to Bess or George, but I don't think they really respond. It's not even a conversation.
It's not really a conversation.
Right.
Yeah. I think, yeah. So I think it passes, but I think it barely passes. And I think that it's like, that's wild.
Ugh.
Oh, but I think it would pass if we had a different sidekick than Corky. If Bess and George were actually our sidekicks, I think it would easily pass.
Absolutely.
So
there is the scene where Jane is talking about not growing up with a mom, and so Nancy.
Yes, yeah.
But that's a very short conversation. Anyway.
Well, all of the conversations that she has with Jane are like shockingly short in retrospect.
Yeah.
Like the longest conversation that she has with another female character who has a name is Barbara Realty about the house.
True. I love Barbara.
I do love Barbara. She's great.
Fantastic. Speaking of, they got a phenomenal cast for this, and I didn't even remember. Like, Bruce Willis, what are you doing here?
Yes, Bruce Willis is in it playing himself. Isn't that insane?
That was a really fun scene. I like that.
I do wonder if part of the strategy of that was just because they knew that if they didn't do that, it might be too small of a movie.
Okay.
That they wouldn't pull all the audience that they wanted to, because Emma Roberts, I think at the time was not incredibly, she was still really young, but I don't think she had a whole lot under her belt at that point.
She'd really only done that Nickelodeon show, and I think that's probably why she picked her, because her audience would have been more familiar with her because of that. But
yeah,
you're right.
But Bruce Willis, and I think the only reason Bruce Willis ended up being in it, isn't he friends with the Roberts family? Like Julia
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
I think so. And so I think that's why they're like, hey, Bruce, will you be in my niece's movie so
just
that we can get some more people to go see it?
We'll shoot it in a day. It's fine. Just come on.
And he's like, yeah, sure, I'll do that for Emma, Yeah. I can just see that happening. But yeah, it's a star-studded cast.
Even the child actors, some of them are still like pretty big actors today. So
Max Thoreau, he was big at the time too. He played Ned. We have Josh Flitter, who plays Corky, and I think he's pretty well worked too.
He's still acting today. I looked it up. I will say as well, he's only a year younger than Emma Roberts in real life, and they try to make it seem like he's like 6 years younger or something like that.
Just because he's kind of short, that's all.
Yeah.
Or was, I don't know. He's probably grown up since then. Yeah. But yeah.
He was in an episode of 30 Rock. Fun fact.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I can see that.
Anyway.
Okay. Should we get into it?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. So we open. Our opening sequence is just beautiful. It's like, first we get a shot of this wall of bookshelves that are just full of Nancy Drew books. Like, you get the yellow spines, they're like Applewood versions, you get library editions.
They're Jen's books.
They're Jen's books?
Yeah, Jen lent her collection for this shot specifically.
I didn't know that. How did
Jen
I not
Fisher.
know that? Oh my God.
Isn't that so great?
That is so great.
Made it even more special to watch it knowing that this time. And it was like, oh, she's like our friend now. We know her. And
that's
like,
so crazy. I can't believe I didn't know that. That makes so much sense. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. I was like, because watching that, I was like, wow, they must have they really did their work sourcing all of these books. Okay. Yeah. So we see that, and then we kind of transition into the sequence of like animated what I would call Nancy Drew style illustrations.
Nappy style. They're definitely like inspired by Nappy's art, which I am obsessed with. This was a really nice touch to do this.
It was. Yeah. They're like black and white sketch illustrations, and it's clearly like a bunch of like Nancy Drew mysteries that we're seeing those images from. And also the Nancy that is shown in those sketches look more like Emma Roberts, right? So we're kind of like cementing Emma as Nancy in these shots. And then that transitions into this live action scene of two men robbing a church office while Nancy is watching them hiding inside of a closet. She ends up sneezing, which obviously then she gets caught by them. And she introduces herself politely as Nancy and kind of catches them off guard. And we kind of learn that she's been on these robbers' case for a while. There's been like this string of burglaries. So this is her catching them. And then we kind of flash forward, and Nancy is on the phone with Chief McGinnis. And she's like negotiating with the police on the behalf of these criminals.
That's great.
While they have essentially like kidnapped her, like she's being held hostage inside the church by them, but she's acting as a negotiator for them. And she even says at one point, she's like, "I won't press charges for the kidnapping as long as you agree to counseling." And he's like, "Well, I won't do that." And Nancy's like, "Sorry, that's a non-negotiable." It's so funny. Also, it's funny because one of the kidnappers gets hungry, so she ends up giving him a lemon square that Hannah baked that she keeps inside of her sleuth kit. Love this. Love the sleuth kit. Love the introduction of the sleuth kit, and she continues to use the sleuth kit throughout. It's probably, honestly, one of my favorite details in the movie is the sleuth kit.
Do you have the DVD?
No.
Of the movie? Oh, I have the DVD version of it, and they have like a special feature on the DVD that's Emma Roberts like talks you through the sleuth kit, and she shows you everything she keeps inside of it. It's a really cute little clip that they added.
I love that. So while she's in there with these guys, firefighters, police, and pretty much the whole town of River Heights are waiting outside the church for this hostage situation to be resolved. And Bess, George, and Ned are also outside. And Ned at first seems really concerned about Nancy, and so Chief McGinnis like hands him the phone to talk to her. But then we just realize that he's just concerned. He's not concerned about the situation. He's concerned about Nancy going to California, which she's about to do for a few months, and forgetting all about him. He's not worried about the hostage situation. He's like, "Nancy, I had this dream that you went off to California, that you got amnesia, and fell in love with a guy from Smallville." So anyway, Nancy resolves this situation. She gets the criminals to agree to a deal that the DA apparently offered them. But then they're walking out of the church office together. The two men kind of start infighting. And Nancy smoothly disappears from this situation because she realizes that they're about to like renege on the deal. And so she is able to escape them by posing as a statue, climbing up a curtain, and then rappelling down the roof of the church to the very impressed crowd gathered outside. She then poses for a photo with the newspaper before she leaves with Carson. You want to take it?
Sure. So when they're driving back, which I'll say it is her beautiful blue convertible. Love the car in this. Carson is actually driving them back home. And while they're driving, he makes her promise that she won't do any sleuthing while in California and is going to do normal teen girl things instead, whatever that may be. So at this point, we learned a little bit more about why Nancy's actually leaving to go to California. Apparently, Carson has some big case that he's working on that's taking place out there, and he explains that he's taken it because this is a chance for him to make a lot more money. Nancy says, like, "Oh, we don't need more money. We're fine." And Carson's like, no, I will be the judge of that. Thank you very much. And Nancy... They make a point to say like how Carson has raised Nancy to take on cases because it helps people rather than for the financial gain part of it. Yeah. And so Nancy's like, why would you be doing this just for money when our whole thing is that we help people? But anyway, they get home and Carson gets out of the car. And as soon as he gets out of the car, Nancy reveals that actually Bess and George are stowed away in the back seat, like under a blanket or something. And they've heard this whole conversation, of course. And they remark, they say how unfortunate this is because Nancy already has a mystery lined up in LA. So what are you going to do now, Nancy? Very typical. But the next day, the Drews are about to head out to go on their trip to California when Ned shows up to give Nancy an early birthday present. It's a new compass, very sweet. And Nancy explains that she's worried that she's not going to get to use it because of Carson's new no sleuthing rule, right? But then she tells Ned all about this mystery that she's got lined up for LA, right? So it's this unsolved case of Delia Draycott, who was this old movie actress about 25 years ago, who disappeared for about 5 months at the height of her fame. Nobody has any idea where she went. And then when she comes back, she throws this giant party for all of Hollywood, doesn't tell anyone why she's back, but she never comes downstairs to the party. And then they find her dead in the pool. So apparently Carson allowed Nancy to be the one who chose their rental house in LA. And somehow Nancy managed to rent Delia's old house. So that's
Such
the
a
whole
plot hole.
mystery.
This is not possible.
Yeah. Nancy, we need more money. Okay, why don't we rent a movie star's mansion and go live in it in Hollywood?
Oh.
So they drive to they take the train to LA, actually, because they say something about there's not an airport or something. So Nancy has to leave her car and they get in the train. And they arrive at the rental house, which is this absolutely beautiful, gorgeous old Hollywood mansion. But it is overgrown and a little bit in disrepair because it's just been sitting empty mostly since she died 25 years ago. Inside, they meet Barbara, the realtor.
Barbara Realty.
Who starts to say something about oh yeah, with an old house like this, you get what you pay for in terms of mystery. And she's about to say something like that, and Nancy has to stop her from saying this in front of Carson so that he doesn't catch on that there's a mystery associated with the house. And the realtor also makes this weird side comment about Nancy's wardrobe and how she's just a makeover waiting to happen.
I have things to say about this later.
Yeah. No, we'll definitely need to come back to that, unless you want to do it now.
No, that's okay, because there's more that I think goes along with this that I want to talk about. So.
Oh, no, you're definitely right. Definitely.
Yeah.
So Nancy, who is trying to honor her agreement with Carson now, she tells the realtor that they're going to need a different place to stay, but the realtor says, nope, sorry, that's the only house available in all of Hollywood and all of LA. You have to stay here now. Too bad. Then we are startled by the abrupt appearance of this old caretaker in a newsboy hat. We get introduced to him. He lives down the road, I guess, but his name is Leshing. So he's just kind of creeping around here.
It's so funny, too, because the realtor literally introduces him as the strange caretaker. She says that to his face. She's like, oh, this is the strange caretaker who lives down the road. It's like, oh my God. Can you imagine if somebody said that about you to somebody else as they were introducing you? Hi, this is my friend Becky. She's really strange.
You gotta watch out for her. What? There's also this really weird side thing where there's a projector set up in the house to play old clips of Delia from old movies so that it looks like she's haunting the place. And Nancy's not thrown by it, don't worry. But later she starts unpacking and we hear a noise coming from somewhere else in the house. And we know it's not Carson because I don't even think that he's home right now. And Leshing has already left, so we don't think that it's him. And so she goes to look out in the hallway or something, but then she comes back and looks at her suitcase, and the case file that she prepared and brought with her has just vanished. It was sitting there right next to the suitcase, and now it's gone. When she turns her back and looks back, disappeared. So she calls the LAPD to report this crime. Also, her shoes were next to the file, and they disappeared as well. And she spends over an hour on the phone on hold with them. And then Carson comes home in this time and they're just like sitting there waiting for them to answer. And finally they do. And Nancy's like, yes, I'd like to report the theft of my moccasins. And the police start laughing at her and hang up on her. And so there's like this funny line about the police like not laughing at crimes. And
I love this moment so much. I think of everything that I think saves this movie for me, this is one of the moments like that I watched that and I was like, okay, they understand a little bit what they're doing here. Because so I just have to talk about this. I'm so sorry.
No, please.
It's so important to me.
It was a good one.
So the quote is, someone must have told a joke over at the precinct because it would be irresponsible for a police department to laugh at crime. That's what Nancy says. She says that to Carson after she hangs up with the police. And I just think that this is so perfect. And I don't know if it was the direction or what, but Emma Roberts delivers this line, I think, so perfectly because we can tell from how she's saying that like she knows that it's not true. Like she knows that like she's kind of lying to herself and she knows that the police department was actually laughing at this crime and laughing at her, but she's saying what she thinks should be true.
Right.
And so it's like this really interesting moment where you can see how Nancy knows that the world is not all like roses and like smiles. Like there's actually bad stuff in the world, but she refuses to acknowledge it because she's like, I'm holding a higher expectation for people and I'm not going to let them like disappoint me in this way, which is such an interesting characterization of Nancy. Like to think that like this whole like peachy keen exterior that she has isn't because she's disillusioned. It's because she instead is trying to like manifest a better reality.
I love that.
For the world. Yes.
It fits so well.
And but in the way that she says it too, you can tell she's really disappointed. Like she's really upset by this, like because she thinks that this is wrong. She thinks that the way the police have treated her is wrong, and it is wrong. But so in that you can see like her disappointment in the situation of what's just happened, and so it's like the world's letting her down, you know? It's just, I just love it so much.
You got to credit Emma Roberts here. She really is a good actress. Even if back then, what a young age she was. Yeah, you can really tell how well she played this, and you can see the emotions that she's going through during this conversation. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Do you want to take it from here?
Sure. So after this, she goes to bed, and then she's laying in bed, and she hears another noise in the house. She tries to call, or she does call Leshing at his apartment to, quote unquote, verify his whereabouts. And then she's just like, go back to sleep.
That's smart, honestly.
Yeah. Then she hears it again. So she runs downstairs to like start to try to like figure out where the noise is coming from. And then she's startled again by Leshing. So she tells Leshing that she's heard this noise and there must be someone in the house. And she's like, how did you get here so quickly? Like I was just talking to you on the phone. How did you get here? But he doesn't answer, and she hears the noise again. So she runs upstairs to the attic where she thinks it was coming from, and no one is there. She ends up asking Leshing if he believes in ghosts, and he says, I am a ghost. Too good.
See what I mean? Just like the perfect amount of just like intriguing, creepy, spooky-ishness. Yes. It's great.
Beautiful. So while up in the attic, Nancy realizes that this attic is actually full of a bunch of Delia's old things. She ends up bringing down some of Delia's old books to her room to kind of flip through. And inside one of these books, she finds an old letter from Delia to someone who just signed their name or is Z. The letter says it's from Delia, and she says that she's planning to change her will because she needs to make provisions for someone else.
Oh.
The next day, Nancy heads to her first day of school in LA, and everyone is, we talked about this, very confused by her. It's a little bit of an understatement to call her an overachiever, because literally the things that she does is so ridiculous it seems almost impossible. Like she builds a birdhouse with 12 flying buttresses in her shop class, I guess in the course of one period. She runs faster than everyone in gym class. She even stands up and gives like a whole memorized Shakespeare monologue as an audition for the school play, which is Pippin. And the theater teacher is like, I just wanted your name. Like, sit down. She's not fitting in. She's sticking out like a sore thumb.
This could have been done better because Nancy we know that she's the overachiever, that she's good at all of these things. It was a fun little montage, but then the result of that to be like, ew, she's so weird for that. Yeah, it felt off. Yeah, it
does feel off. And it just feels a little bit disingenuous. Like, I mean, like, I understand people seeing that and being kind of like weirded out by it. Like, I'm thinking about like when I was young and in school, you know what I mean? But I don't think it would be straight off the bat. I don't think it would put a target on your back that large.
No.
You know what I mean?
Especially not in this thing. It's not like she's intentionally trying to show off or something like that, which for kids, I could see how that would get some ridicule, but she's being genuine.
It's just the way she is. Yeah.
Right. Anyway.
At lunch, she sits next to these two mean girls who later we learn their names are Inga and Trish. Nancy gets hit on by Inga's 12-year-old little brother. This is Corky. The two girls also make fun of Nancy, and then they steal her cupcake, which she brought to lunch. Is very sad. After this scene, Nancy goes to talk to the principal about like changes that she thinks needs to be made in the school. I love this. I thought this was very Nancy. She's like, we need to get a salad bar. There are not enough healthy lunch choices. I'm testing for lead paint in, this place or whatever. And also she says to the principal that he thinks that she thinks that they should consider hosting a CPR class or something because she's CPR certified and it's given her great peace of mind to know that she may save a life one day. And just so happens that Inga is also like nearby when she says this, so she overhears Nancy saying this. So that's going to be relevant later.
Oh, I hate this scene. So they go to a basketball game at the school, and Inga is there with Corky, her brother, who starts choking on this pretzel. And Nancy's in the stands as well at the game, and she's sitting a few rows behind them. And Inga starts like, oh my gosh, does anyone here know CPR? Knowing full well that Nancy's going to get up and volunteer. So Nancy runs over. I hate the way that they portray like somebody being sick in this because it's always just them laying on the ground like they're dead. So he's choking, but he's like laying on the ground. So she like does some chest compressions and manages to like get him to spit the pretzel out. But then he's still just like laying there. So she's like, he's unresponsive. And so Inga's like, oh my gosh, you're going to have to give him mouth to mouth. So Nancy like leans over to start giving him mouth to mouth. And before she can, Corky starts like giggling. And then we learn essentially that Inga orchestrated this whole stunt, got Corky to like fake choking so that like it would look like they were kissing and it would humiliate Nancy in front of the whole school. So even though it didn't like happen, Nancy realizes what's happened here, and she is really embarrassed and is like laughed out of the gym essentially. This is heart-wrenching.
So annoying. It's so annoying on so many levels. First of all, because it's an inaccurate representation of the issue that's happening. And I understand that, like, of course, these kids are faking it. So he's not really choking. But the fact that Nancy is supposed to be CPR trained and she comes down to this kid who is quote unquote choking and he's like coughing. Like he hasn't, like if you're coughing, you're not choking. If there's air passing through your lungs, you shouldn't do the Heimlich maneuver. Right. Like you can maybe pat them on the back, like to get them some water, try to help them get whatever is stuck in their throat down, but you're not going to perform the Heimlich maneuver on them.
And Nancy would know that. And
then he quote unquote passes out, which, okay, let's say maybe she did believe that he did that. She would not start to perform CPR on him without first checking to see if he's breathing.
Right.
Like that's the first step of CPR is like, one, is their heart beating? Two, are they breathing? Two, is their heart beating? Right? Like, And so she doesn't do that. She just goes to start giving him mouth to mouth. That's not how it works. First of all, you don't even have to give people mouth to mouth anymore. That's not something I think that's even necessary to do CPR anymore. I know this was 2007. You can just do the chest compressions, I think, and that's acceptable at this point in time. But like, Nancy would know this. Nancy would know this. I know she would know this because she gives some girl an emergency tracheotomy later in the movie.
Oh my gosh, that was traumatizing. We'll get there.
Anyway, but so that's annoying. But then it's also annoying to me that the fact that they're at a full-on basketball game. Like there's cheerleaders, there's a crowd. Like this is a big deal. There's concessions. Like this is a big deal. When Corky starts to quote unquote choke, everybody goes silent. The whole gym pauses. The basketball game gets put on pause. You're telling me that there's no other adult in this room who is trained in CPR who isn't coming over for this situation? They're all relying on this 16-year-old girl to solve this issue. There's not a coach there? There's not a coach there who's trained in CPR?
You would
coach
think.
Of a high school basketball team.
Oh my gosh.
I don't understand that. And then, the fact that like Nancy Drew comes and this whole thing, it's supposed to be embarrassing to her. Like, oh yeah, she knows CPR, was trying to help someone. Like, how embarrassing.
And then there's the whole conversation about consent with this.
Right.
Of like trying to force Nancy to kiss somebody who's way too young and she's clearly, it's inappropriate. It's weird.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
It's disgusting.
It's disgusting.
It's gut-wrenching to think about.
But there's a real teen story, I think, within that. That as weird as it is, I think like I understand the intent of putting that in there. You know what I mean?
Oh no, definitely. Yeah. Because it's unfortunately it's a very realistic portrayal of the mean girl trope. So yeah.
Anyway. Sorry, you could continue. It's an effed up scene, in my opinion.
Oh, it is. Sorry, I went on such a tangent. I forgot where we were. Okay. Okay, so Nancy leaves the gym, and the next day, Corky actually shows up at her house to apologize for this little stunt. And he says that he wants to get to know Nancy because he thinks that she's really awesome. He clearly has a huge crush on her and is like, I don't know, it's kind of weird, but he's like, oh yeah, no, it's cool, like we can be friends and I'm not going to be weird to you, but he still like very obviously likes her. So yeah, they talk a little bit and she ends up inviting him inside to show him what she's doing with her investigation. She's had all these stills from previous movies that Delia had done printed out, and she's got them like arranged on the floor in order of, not the order in the movie, but in order of that they were actually shot in real life. So she's showing him all of these prints that she's got laid out on the floor. And while she's talking to him about this, she realizes that, this last month or so in the timeline, Delia's only pictured waist up. So Nancy starts to theorize, could this maybe be like a pregnancy? Because that's very common to do in movies, only shoot the actress from certain angles. And if she's pregnant, but Delia never had any children. So I don't know. Very interesting. But then Nancy also finds a photo of Delia from right before she returned. And in it, she's wearing a robe that's got like some sort of branding on the front of it. It's like an X shape. So we were looking for a logo of some sort that might appear on a robe. So she's going to try to track down where we think this logo might come from, whether it's like a spa or something like that. We do also notice that in a lot of her photos, there's always this man that's sort of just off frame every single time. He's either like a blurry hand out in the corner, or you just see like the side profile or something, or he's like off in the background, but he's always kind of around. So she thinks that this might be the Z from the letter that she'd found that Delia had written. Oh, this is the... This is the scene with Bruce Willis, and honestly,
it makes no sense.
It doesn't, but it's so funny and how they do it. That they just put this in just for like
just to have Bruce Willis in the movie.
Exactly. Yeah. So Nancy decides essentially that she needs to go to Hollywood to try to track down more information about Delia and this potential Z person. So she gets there, and they end up on the set of some movie scene, and Nancy goes to try to ask, I guess, like the wardrobe person about, like, hey, can I talk to you about this movie a long time ago? And the wardrobe person is like, I don't have time to talk to you. Get on set. You look 50s enough. Just get out there. And it turns out this movie set is like police noir film that's set in the 50s, right? And so Nancy, because she's got these 50s outfits, they just assume that she's there to serve as an extra. So they end up like putting her directly behind Bruce Willis in this scene. And it's really funny because they start filming and Bruce Willis plays the police officer and he starts reading the Miranda rights to whoever the suspect is in this scene. And Nancy actually interrupts the whole scene. Is like, actually, I don't think that this is right because the Miranda rights weren't a thing yet. So it doesn't really make sense for your character to be reading them unless it's set later. And Bruce Willis turns to the director of the movie and is like, wait a minute, is that right? And the director's like, I don't know. And then he turns back around to Nancy and is like, yeah, clearly the director here doesn't know what he's doing. So could you take over directing this movie?
Yes. It's so weird because he seems so serious. Like he seems like 100% legit. Like, so are you available to direct? Like, you know, like,
can you do this?
And Nancy's just like,
Yeah, she makes like a weird excuse and they leave. So we cut out of that scene. So that was great. But they're already here in Hollywood and Nancy's just kind of like walking around this, I guess, open movie set thing. And the sun is starting to set. So we see some long shadows that have been cast by the palm trees that are all over the place. And Nancy realizes that, when you look at the shadow of the palm trees at a certain angle, some of the trees looks like they're crossing. Wait a minute. That's an X shape. Hold on. That robe didn't have an X on it at all. It's just too far away in the picture. You couldn't tell that they're actually palm trees. So we just need to find some spa that has two crossed palm trees as their logo, which she Googles a little bit. She identifies that it's this place called Twin Palms Spa.
Love this piece of detective
So clever,
work.
Nancy. Yes, we love it. So she ends up driving there the next day, and a worker who's there tells her that their records were actually destroyed in a fire, but even so, their records are confidential anyway. So Nancy decides that she is going to visit the closest hospital instead.
So smart.
So when she gets there, she goes into their records department and asks for birth records for this like specific week 24 years ago.
Okay, pause, because this is a massive plot hole for me. How does she know what week she's looking for?
I guess the week that was the week before Delia came back.
But does she just like assume that if she had a baby, she had it that week, that she literally came back like the day after she gave birth or something?
Who knows? Who
Unreal.
knows?
Anyway.
But, so she asks, can you give me the records for all the children that were put up for adoption in this week 24 years ago? And of course they're like, no, our records are confidential. What are you talking about? But then she's like, oh, well, thank you for your help anyway. As a thank you, goodbye parting gift, I'm going to give you this blondie that Hannah made for me. And so she leaves him the blondie. And the guy loves the blondie so much that he's like, all right, I'll help you. Like he's so persuaded by this baked good.
First of all, what is Hannah putting in those baked goods?
Right.
Second of all, are you serious? Like, oh my God. Oh, I can't.
Another plot hole. Insanely unprofessional. But he ends up giving her the name of the pediatrician that the hospital recommends to adoptive parents, I guess. So Nancy visits the office of that pediatrician, and the woman there says that she was able to find the records of 3 different newborns that were born in that week and were later put up for adoption.
This is such a HIPAA violation.
But she's unsure if she can release the information to Nancy. She's like, I have the files right here, but I can't give them to you.
Oh my God.
But then the phone happens to ring, so Nancy is able to just like look through the files while her back is turned and get their names. And so then she leaves and she's going to go track down the addresses of all the people in the area that match these 3 names.
Which is like hundreds of people.
Right.
Yeah. It's a lot of people.
So we get to this montage of Nancy like going to all these different addresses and like, hey, are you so-and-so? And they're like, who's asking? And she's like, are you adopted? And they're like, no. And they all close the door in her face. And so we get through this montage. And finally, the last one she gets to, that she's like, wait, actually, yes, I was adopted. Who's asking? Why? What do you want to know? So finally, we have found the daughter. Do you want to take it from here?
Sure. So her name is Jane Brighton, and when Nancy sees her for the first time, she just is like the spitting image of Delia. Props to the casting director for this, because they did a really great job with this. Oh, this is actually, what's her name?
Rachel.
Yes,
something.
Rachel Lee Cook.
Yes.
I love her so much. Yeah, so she plays Jane. And also we see that she has a daughter herself. So we see Delia's granddaughter as well. Nancy explains to Jane that she thinks that she's the daughter of Delia Draycott and that there may be money for her in, this will that Delia's written that we don't have, if they can prove that she's Delia's daughter. Later, Nancy is walking down the street with Corky, who is again trying to ask her out. But then they're nearly run over by a car. They only barely get out of the way in time, but they're fine. This is one of my favorite lines in the movie. Happens right after this scene where Nancy goes, "I wonder who tried to kill us," and Corky goes, "Yeah, I'm wondering that too. In fact, I'm kind of freaking out about it." They definitely put Corky in there for comic relief, and I do think that they are a little bit successful in that sometimes.
Oh, he's very funny. It just, yes. I don't know how well it fits to the books themselves.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Anyway. Later on, Nancy gets a threatening call telling her that she'll be harmed if she keeps looking into the mystery. So the pressure's on. We've got a threat. Also, somebody tried to kill us. So things are kind of ramping up here.
Mm-hmm. This is so classic mystery story, too. I don't see how anybody could be unhappy with this plot because it's so great.
Later, Nancy goes to try to find this guy named Mr. Biedermeier, who was Delia Draycott's attorney, and now I guess the executor of her estate. So she's trying to go talk to the guy who is responsible for her will, right? She meets him. He ends up being kind of like this self-important attorney for the stars kind of guy. Like he's a little bit too busy to talk to her, but he does give her his card so she can reach out to him later. Nancy then goes to visit Jane again, but this time Jane is now like very unwelcoming to Nancy. Like she won't even answer or like fully open the door when Nancy comes to see her. And it's kind of clear that she's also been threatened and is now like too scared and doesn't want to pursue the matter anymore. And she tells Nancy to leave them alone. Later that night, Nancy sees the ghost of Delia, potentially saying that the will is in the Chinese box. But then she wakes up, so she thinks, was she maybe dreaming? Was that a dream that she saw Delia's ghost, or is Delia's ghost real? We'll never know. So the next day, Nancy asks Leshing about this, and he says that Delia's valuable antiques were sold off last year, and if there was a Chinese box, it would have been sold then. He also warns Nancy that anyone who has looked into this in the past has ended up dead. So, is that a threat? I don't know, but it's certainly threatening sounding. Nancy ends up finding a dealer of Chinese antiques in an ad that's circled in the yellow pages of the phone book that I guess that they have there. And so she assumes that this is who this Chinese box was sold to. There's a lot of assumptions going on here that makes me a little bit annoyed. But I feel like this is very stereotypical of the mystery stories.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'll allow it.
I'm not mad about it.
No. Yeah. Then she has a phone call from Carson, and he tells her that he has an early birthday present for her outside. It is her blue convertible from River Heights. He had poor Ned, drive this car all the way from, I guess, Chicago to LA. When he must have started that trip the day they left. Anyway, so Ned is here. Yay. Also, Corky is here too. I think he just showed up at the same time that Ned showed up. And I guess all three of them are going to go out to go get lunch. But Inga dropped Corky off here. And so she's just sitting there with Trish in the car and watching this whole exchange. So she sees Ned. She thinks Ned is very, very cute. So basically, she decides that she and Trish are going to follow them to lunch. And then at lunch, they're all talking, and Ned and Corky are clearly not getting along because there's some weird vibes because Corky is making it very clear that he's interested in Nancy and is trying to intimidate Ned. And Ned's not intimidated, but he's weirded out by yeah, I like Nancy. But then there's also there's this weird scene where Nancy orders milk at lunch. They're at a Chinese restaurant in Chinatown. She orders milk for lunch. And then Corky also orders milk to be like Nancy. And then Ned makes his drink order, and he asks for an iced latte. And they're we don't serve that here. This is a Chinese restaurant. And so it's just very much Ned is ordering what he thinks someone in Hollywood should order.
Oh,
and so
yeah.
There's this weird tension between Corky being see, I ordered what Nancy wanted to order because I'm actually like Nancy and you're not like her and you shouldn't be here and all this stuff, but it's all subtext. It's very weird.
It's very much them puffing their chests up at each other, and it's
no.
awkward.
It's awkward because he's 12.
Nancy already told you no 6 times, dude.
Mm-hmm,
Leave it alone.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, so Inga and Trish also end up crashing this lunch because they just want to talk to Ned and I guess try to steal Ned away from Nancy. It's a subplot.
Was it this scene where Nancy doesn't even introduce Ned as her boyfriend? She's like, this is my very good friend, Ned.
As a friend. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, and poor Ned, you can see it in his face how much struggle he's got with this.
Uh-huh.
Oh no!
I want to be your boyfriend.
Yes. Gosh. Okay.
We got to talk about the Nancy and Ned portrayal in this too later.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Very much the Nancy's too busy for him, but he's just in love anyway. Puppy dog eyes. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think this representation makes me feel different things than most Nancy and Ned.
Oh, okay.
Thanks. So yeah.
Yes, we'll have to talk about that. Okay.
Yes.
So they're at this lunch, and then they're already in Chinatown for lunch. So they go to see the Chinese art dealer from the Yellow Pages that they think that's where the Chinese box ended up. So they go into the store, and Nancy says because Trish and Inga come along as well. So Nancy tells everyone all right, split up and start looking through all the boxes in this store for a while, because I guess it's just a very crowded store. Unfortunately, they don't find anything, and Nancy goes back to her car, and as they're all walking, I guess Trish and Inga are just talking, and Nancy sees that there is a bomb in the backseat of her car. So she has this really great slow motion scene. She picks it up, is running, throws it down a manhole cover, just gets away in time before it explodes. And then she sees the exact same car that tried to run her and Corky down the other day. She sees it driving away from the scene. So the same people are trying to follow her and hurt her now. So Nancy, Ned, and Corky all jump in the car to chase after them.
I just wrote some quotes down that Nancy says here that I love so much. Props to the writers. They got it. They understood.
Oh, yeah. That's what's funny. It really gets my goat when someone tries to kill me. It's so rude. We will go the posted speed limit and no faster. This is great. They end up getting caught by a red light, and Ned tells her that she has to stop working on the case and be normal, like she'd promised to Carson. So they go home, and we flash to this scene where Nancy is painting, and Ned and Corky are in Nancy's convertible, like they are George Washington crossing the Delaware, and Nancy's painting their picture as though Ned is Washington, and
What is this? What even is this? I don't understand why this is in the movie. I don't get it.
This is normal teen stuff. This is what teens do if they don't sleuth, right? I mean...
Oh my God.
Apparently Nancy thinks that, so we're doing that. But then Nancy's like, Ned, why is your shirt so wrinkly? It's throwing off this picture, right? And he's like, well, I mean, I tried to keep it all nice, but my closet's only 6 inches deep, so... And Nancy's like, hold on, what are you talking about? What do you mean your closet's only 6 inches deep? So they go to look at his closet, and they end up finding that that deep because there's a secret passageway hidden behind it. So that's how the intruder has been getting upstairs. So of course, at this, Nancy, of course, cannot help but go into the secret passageway and explore it, obviously. So we climb down, and it opens up a whole wall behind the fireplace in her bedroom, and then goes even further down into the basement. And then when they get there, there's a door that leads into a tunnel. So, of course, they go into the tunnel. And then that leads to a laundry room in the apartment where Leshing is living. Very interesting. Then we have Nancy's birthday party. This is really great. So she plans her birthday party herself, and we have the scene where she's like passing out invitations to everybody at school. Of course, she invites Trish and Inga, and then later that day she goes to visit Jane, but finds that the apartment's now completely empty, and there's just like this eviction notice there. So something has happened, and we're not able to track down Jane, but we go back to Nancy's house that evening because it's time for her party now, and they set up and everything. And it's going to be like a very chill evening. And I wrote down something from this scene when they're setting up because I thought it was so funny. So 2007, Nancy puts on music. She puts on a vinyl record and she goes, yeah, download is cool, but vinyl's even better. It's like download, not downloading music, not downloaded music, but just download as the medium itself. Yes. You can put it on an iPad, but nothing beats old school vinyl. Anyway. So they have their party, but then Inga shows up with a bunch of people, and it turns into this like rager that Nancy was not planning for by any means. And so for some reason she decides that she's going to call Leshing during this party and ask him to come to the house quickly because she wants to see if he will use the secret passageway to get there. And he does. So she's basically like standing there when he comes out of the secret passageway and asks him if he is Z. He doesn't answer, and just tells her to go back to the party. So she does.
Yeah.
Then Nancy gets another threatening phone call, and at this point, the party is starting to get really rowdy, and this is so sad. Ned comes out with her birthday cake and is like larking it out and singing, and then like people just get too rowdy and end up knocking the cake over, and it gets smashed all over Ned and the floor, and people start breaking things, and there's like absolute chaos. And then Inga starts shouting for help. Somebody call 911 because Trish is choking. So Nancy, of course, thinks that this is another prank, another attempt to embarrass her, but it turns out it's not. She's legitimately choking. So she's unconscious on the floor as well, as we know choking people do. We actually learn, wait a minute, she's not choking because she has a peanut allergy and she was making out with somebody who ate a peanut butter cookie at the party. So she's like in shock, basically. And this is when Nancy has to give her the emergency tracheotomy. She's just like, all right, I'm going to need a knife and a ballpoint pen. And so somebody hands them to her. And then the camera just like flashes. It stops focusing on Trish and Nancy and it just like pans and like focuses just on Nancy's face. So you don't see any of this that's happening. You just see how
like the audience is like other people in the party's face reacting to this, which is a great move.
You see how like intensely focused she is, and just like boop 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 done,
and they just go, "Oh my god!"
Oh, so traumatizing. But yeah, just is able to do this. So the party basically gets shut down, but it was obviously a hit, and Inga is so impressed by Nancy's ability to throw a good party that she offers to take her and Ned shopping the next day. And I think you should take this scene because this is great as well.
Yeah, so they go to the mall, and they end up going into the store where Inga makes this snide comment to, I guess, the clerk or whoever's working there about Nancy's outfit. Like, somebody clearly needs help, like, with their look. And the store clerk, like, actually loves the outfit that Nancy has and kind of, like, actually disses like Inga's outfit. And she ends up like wanting to take Nancy's picture because she loves how she looks so much. And of course Nancy, because she asks Nancy where she got her dress, and Nancy is like, I made it myself from one of my mom's patterns, which of course she did. It's very sweet. But I just think that this whole like fashion subplot is so weird, and I don't know why this is part of the movie. But we can talk about that later, I guess. Anyway, so that happens, and then later that day, it's time for Ned to leave and go back to Rubber Heights. He and Nancy have this bittersweet goodbye where it's like neither of them really want to like say how they're feeling about the other, but clearly there's a lot of unexpressed emotion happening there. Anyway, he leaves, and back inside the house, Nancy notices that there is a present on the table for her. It's a cell phone, and there's a typed note there that says it's a early birthday present or a late birthday present, I don't know, from Carson. Interesting. Then there's a knock on the door, and Nancy goes to open it, and it is Jane, and she is in tears, and she tells Nancy that CPS took her daughter, saying that she is an unfit parent. And of course, she says that all of the allegations are untrue, but she doesn't know what to do. So Nancy enlists Carson's help, and he says that they'll all go downtown tomorrow to try to sort out this situation and get her back custody of her daughter. Jane also tells Nancy why she turned her away the last time. She says that a scary man came to her door and threatened her. And she also says that he had one pale blue eye and one dark eye, which I just love. This is such a great trope, too. And then we, as the audience, not Nancy or Jane or anybody, but we as the audience see that there is the same man with one pale blue eye and one dark eye sitting outside of their house watching them. So very spooky. The next day, Carson, I guess, has made like inroads at some government office. It's all very vague what he's actually doing to try to help her. But he tells Jane that he found out that some unknown person has been making allegations against her and her parenting. And he asked Jane if she has any enemies. And Nancy, of course, like knowing the real situation, is like about to confess, right, to Carson. Like, yeah, she probably does because of this, right? But then they run into Mr. Biedermeier, the lawyer for Delia's estate, and I guess Carson tracked him down this time because I guess he does know who Jane is. This is a confusing scene for me. I don't really understand how we got to this point, but I guess Carson does know who Jane is, and he knows who Mr. Biedermeier is, and he's called him, and then they just like leave together to go discuss something, but he doesn't tell us what.
Plot hole.
Yeah. Anyway. So then Nancy and Jane go home and they watch like old movies that Delia made. And they bond over, not having a mom while growing up. Then they watch this particular scene in one of these movies with a Chinese box in it. And Nancy watches this whole scene and she sees that when Delia opens the box in the movie, that there's actually a hidden compartment inside of it. So she runs back to this Chinese antique store, finds this same box, opens the secret compartment inside, and finds the last will and testament of Delia Draycott.
Woohoo!
Woo! And the owner just lets her have it, very luckily. So she takes it and she is walking back to her car, reading the will, and she sees that Delia actually did leave all of her estate to her daughter. So now that she's found this, Jane should be able to inherit everything in Delia's estate. And then so Nancy calls Carson on her cell phone because she's like, I gotta tell Carson now, we've cracked the case wide open. So she calls him and he's like, wait, what are you calling from? What number are you calling from? I don't know this number. And Nancy's like, oh, it's the cell phone that you got me for my birthday. And Carson's like, I didn't get you a cell phone for your birthday. So Nancy realizes that the bad guys gave her this cell phone and they must be tracking her location right now. And then two men come out of a nearby car and kidnap her. They chloroform her and she falls unconscious.
Oh my gosh.
Dun, dun, dun!
See, another classic Mr. Story.
Yeah,
trope.
I know.
Love it. Great.
You gonna take it now?
Sure. So she wakes up and she realizes that she is in this old projection room of an old theater. And the door to the room is locked, but she does have her trusty sleuth kit with her. So
Have
she
sleuth kit will travel, baby.
Yes, perfect. So she's able to look through the window out into the auditorium from the projection room, and the bad guys are just sitting down there watching a movie. So Nancy manages to climb out of the projection window onto some scaffolding that is set up around the inside the house of the theater. And she sneaks around and makes her way over to right above where the bad guys are, and she sees that they just have Delia's will sitting there on a table next to them, and it's got one of those binder clip things on it. So she manages to take this string that she's got wrapped around a pencil with a paper clip tied to one end, and she manages to reel down the string, use the paper clip hook end of it, because she's bent it to where it can go down and pick up the little loop thing on the binder clip so that it picks up the entire packet of paper, manages to reel it back up and then grab it. And then right at this time, one of the bad guys sends one of the henchmen or whatever to go check on Nancy. And then when he gets back, he announces to them that, oh, she's gone. And right at this moment, she falls off of the scaffolding, but manages to escape. She has some cheeky remark to them of thanks, guys. See you later, though.
Yeah.
And she manages to escape, runs away, and then jumps onto the top of a moving trash truck. And then manages to get to her car, but then ends up in this chase with the kidnappers that results in a minor accident, but then they drive away. So whatever. So she ends up in the hospital and she's bruised up a little bit, but she is okay. And Carson comes and she finally admits to him that, yes, this is all because I have been working on the Delia Draycott case. And she says that she wanted to tell him sooner. And she really did try to not do the sleuthing and just try to be normal, but she just cannot help herself. And she tells Carson, oh, by the way, I did find the will. And then Mr. Biedermeier shows up to the hospital, and I guess he was with Carson when Carson got the call about Nancy, so that's why he came to the hospital. And then Carson tells her that he is going to be doing some consulting work for Mr. Biedermeier, and he'll be able to work remotely from River Heights, so this is all great. They can move back home now. But Nancy's not ready to go anywhere just yet. I mean, leave the hospital, sure, but she's not ready to give up on this case and go back to River Heights just yet. Mr. Biedermeier offers to give them a ride home in his limo, and while they're driving home, he's like, oh, so Nancy, did you ever find that will? What's going on with that? And she's like, oh, in fact, yes, I did. I'm very excited about it. And he's like, oh, yeah, we'd love to see a copy just because, we knew Delia and all that stuff. And Carson leans over and is like, oh, yeah, in fact, his firm stands to lose a lot of money if Delia's assets were no longer, I guess, under his control or whatever. And we learn that he was her manager back in the day. Mr. Biedermeier was. So Nancy sees, while they're having this conversation, Carson and Mr. Biedermeier are looking over these documents, and Nancy notices Mr. Biedermeier signing his name on one of them, and he happens to I don't know, the signature is very weird. He signs his name, but then he draws a large Z over the entire signature. And Nancy's like, oh, that's an interesting signature. Why do you draw a Z like that? And he's like, oh, yeah, Zachary is my middle name, so that's my signature. He draws the Z over his name. And we realized he is the Z, Delia's Z, the one from the letter that she'd written, the one from the pictures where he's always weirdly in the background. And she realizes, okay, we are in a lot of danger here. Great. And then he's like, so Nancy, where is the will? Where is it physically right now? And she gets all really, really quiet and refuses to answer. And she tries to inch over to Carson to whisper to him, we need to get out of this car right now. And he is just not picking up what she's putting down. He's like, what do you mean, Nancy? What are you talking about? Why are you upset, Nancy? Why don't you like Mr. Biedermeier? This was very frustrating with Carson.
Especially because, like, he's the one who said, yeah, his firm stands to lose a lot of money if this will turns out to be real. So he should know that he has serious motive to say, I don't know, want to harm Nancy for looking at the will, or, you know, try to make allegations against Jane as a parent. Like,
why is he not putting this together?
this is what I mean. This is I don't like this Carson. He's dumb.
So Carson's not picking up the hint. So she just has to directly say to the driver, like, hey, Mr. Driver, can you please stop the car? Because we need to get out. And at this point, we see the, like, you know, the in limos, the driver barrier thing rolls down, and we see he's got one blue eye and one brown eye. And he refuses to stop the car. So Nancy just opens the door and throws herself out onto the street and just, like, rolls down the road. And Carson, she just, like, is like, see you later.
Yeah.
Fend for yourself, Carson. And so the inside the car, they subdue him so he can't, like, jump out after her. And they must be near the house that they're staying at, because Nancy is able to run down the street, and she runs to this apartment where I guess she's like, she knows the neighbor there. It's this older woman that's there.
Yeah.
And that woman is like, yeah, come in, use the phone to call the police. And so she does, but as she's doing this, she sees out the back window that the bad guys have followed her here. So she runs out the back door, makes it into that secret passageway, and locks it behind her. And so then when she locks it, she starts sprinting through the passageway back toward the house and runs straight into Mr. Biedermeier. This also felt exactly like that Benita Granville scene in Hidden Staircase, where they're underneath the houses in the tunnel.
That scene was so scary.
It
filling
was.
up with water.
And this was super scary as well, because he, like, instantly grabs her and is, like, shaking her, screaming in her face, tell me where the will is, where is it? And she refuses and says, tell me why you killed Delia. And he, just, like, no qualms about this. He immediately just admits to it. And it's like, yeah, after she had that baby, she went crazy. She wanted to quit the business and run off with the caretaker, who we learn is the baby's father. And she was Biedermeier's only client at the time. So this would have ruined him completely and destroyed his career if she were to quit the industry. So he got angry and killed her. All right.
Because I'm a man, and when I get angry, I hurt women.
Yeah, I should be in control of the situation and her fate. So Nancy's able to run away, but only makes it as far as her room before she gets caught again by Biedermeier and his men. And they start, like, they make it very clear that they're going to kill her. And she's like, oh, you know, you don't want to do that because strangulation leaves too much bruising. And that's like a handprint. They could, like,
don't shoot me either, because that's a lot of blood evidence that you're leaving behind.
So
he's like, what way do you recommend I kill you, Miss Drew? I was like, let me think about that.
But then, greatly, this is when Leshing comes out of the secret passageway, hits Biedermeier over the head with a shovel, picks up the gun that he had been holding, and then the other men just, like, run off and leave. And then this is where Nancy reveals that actually she had a tape recorder in her bag this whole time, and reveals that she got the entire confession on tape.
Oh yeah, that's my girl.
So at this point, they're just in the bedroom in this house, right? And so Corky, Inga, and Trish all run in, and we see that they are dressed just like how Nancy was dressed when they all went to the store and made fun of her outfit there. Apparently, that picture that the lady at the store took of Nancy ended up in a magazine, and they call it the new trend is like the new sincerity, and it's like so cool to wear vintage stuff because it's more authentic or something like that. And so Inga and Trish are both like, "Look, Nancy, we have moccasins on just like you do. Look at our penny loafers, and we're so trendy now." And so I guess that this is their way of saying that, like, they've accepted Nancy and she's no longer the outcast. Whatever.
I don't like it. I don't like it either.
So then Nancy turns to Leshing, who is still in the room with them, and thanks him for saving her and says, oh, you know, there's somebody that you need to meet. Her name's Jane. and she's your daughter, basically. And then the police arrive, they arrest Biedermeier, and we learn that Jane has regained custody of her daughter, and Carson tells Nancy that he's really proud of her. It's a really sweet moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get this great scene with Barbara, who goes to Jane and is like, so, you can make like a lot of money if you wanted to sell your mom's old house. And Jane is like, absolutely no shot, because I'm going to live in it myself with my daughter. And I'm actually going to turn it into a home for single mothers, and anybody else who like needs a place can come and stay here as well. So we get the really happy, wholesome ending that way. And then we flash back to River Heights, where Nancy and Carson have moved home after everything has ended. And then we see Nancy and Ned are outside next to her car, I guess just like on the driveway or whatever. And they're talking about, Ned's telling Nancy about how much he loves her, about how she's perfect exactly the way that she is, and he doesn't want her to change or anything like that. And he never liked Inga, even though Inga made it very clear to him that she was into him. And then they kiss. It's very sweet. And then Carson pops his head out the front door of the house and is like, hey, Nancy, you got a phone call on the line here. Something about the Loch Ness Monster and missing diamonds or something like that. And Nancy's like, oh, great. And so she's like currently kissing Ned. But as soon as she hears this, she's like, another case. And she like runs in the house and forgets all about Ned. And then roll credits, the end.
So
and we
cute.
get a very, very cute little like Nappy inspired drawing ending as well.
Yeah.
So yay, the end.
Yay, the end. It's very cute. It's a cute movie.
It is a great, cute movie.
I like a lot of the choices that they made. I do think they get Nancy's characterization mostly right. And I think that Emma Roberts as Nancy Drew, she does such a great job of showing like traits that like normally would be like, this is a ridiculous character. She does it in a way that makes it not that ridiculous. It's still a little ridiculous. But she's very sincere in her representation of that. And so I think they pull that off just barely, And I think at the core of it, I think they understood what they were doing with the mystery elements and kind of like all of the, callbacks to the mystery stories. Stylistically, they clearly knew what they were doing. It's very well designed. It is a little bit, I don't know, it feels a little bit superficial.
Yes.
To me, there's something about it that's like, and it's kind of ironic because the movie itself, it kind of talks about like sincerity, right? As like being like Nancy Drew's defining trait, but the movie is kind of fake feeling. I mean, I know it's a movie, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, like it feels, just kind of shallow, like a shallow representation of everything, which I think is like my issue with it. It just doesn't feel quite right. It feels just like a plasticine Hollywood version of Nancy Drew with a little bit of like snideness under there. And so while it's cute and fun and funny and pretty and nice to watch and entertaining at its core, I think there's something rotten in Denmark.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But fun overall. It was fun
overall. Fun overall. Yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely worth a watch if you're at all interested. It's very cute. It's a nice way to spend. It's only like an hour and a half. So,
Yeah, I didn't happen to catch the timestamp on this one, actually. But actually, I have the DVD sitting right here. It says...
99 minutes is the runtime.
Okay.
Anyway,
what a missed opportunity for the sequel, though. I wonder what happened that they didn't end up doing that.
I mean, I think kind of regardless, I think even if there's a planned sequel or not, I think leaving it off with Nancy getting a call about another mystery is just another callback to the mystery stories in general, So I think it's great either way. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, but let's get into it because I have a lot more, I think, to say. Okay, so let's talk about the fashion subplot because the fashion subplot drives me bonkers because it's totally irrelevant. And I understand, like, thematically, it's trying to portray this undercurrent that we've talked about of Nancy kind of being this outcast and people don't think that she is cool. They think that all this old-fashioned stuff is uncool until one person sees her and is like, no, that's great. I love that. And then everybody piles on. And so that's supposed to communicate to us, I think, that, well, all of this like stuff that Nancy has gone through, it's okay now because she's finally been accepted.
No.
But it's not. All it does is communicate like, oh, okay, so we're just gonna be shallow and say that it is just actually about looks, but because now we appreciate the looks, it's okay. Like, it wasn't at all about like trying to make it, well, like, we shouldn't be thinking about how people look, or like sometimes people aren't going to fit in, but you can see past that to someone's true character, or they have other qualities that you may not have that you should appreciate, or it's nothing about that.
No, it's
just
about looking cool and wearing the right shoes.
Yes, it's about what's trendy, and that Nancy Drew is trendy. Nancy Drew can be trendy. Don't we like Nancy Drew? Isn't it cool to be old-fashioned? It's like, that's not the point. That's so far missed the point. Like, the reason why people like Nancy Drew and the staying power of Nancy Drew is not because it's some trend. It's because she has these values that supersede trend, that are more important and continue to be important and relevant, even though the clothes that she wears are not anymore,
Right.
Sorry, I'm off my soapbox on that now, but it just annoys me so much. I'm like,
I think they could have done away with that plot line entirely.
Yeah.
Either just set it in the 50s and have her be trendy in the 50s, or give her a 2007 wardrobe.
Yes. What I would not give, you guys, I've said it before, I won't stop saying it, what I wouldn't give for a period drama Nancy Drew set in the 50s, hell, the 30s, I don't care, I'm not picky, give me something. Give me Nancy Drew in a poodle skirt, whatever, just give it to me. I want it so badly.
Although other than the weird fashion, she's an outcast, she's weird thing with it, I think that there is something to be said about how well of a modern day remake this was. They did, I mean, for the time period, they definitely hit all the marks that they needed to make a successful 2007 movie. Like I said, they got like the biggest Nickelodeon star from the time. We've got, I don't even know, Trish and Inga's fashion is truly very, very 2007. So I do appreciate seeing that. Even like the cell phone thing, the way that they used the cell phone plot line, I thought that was pretty smart, and only something that would have made sense for 2007 or around that time period, So I thought it was a successful update to her, other than sticking her back in the 50s for no reason.
Yeah, I think that's probably a big credit to the director that they got. Andrew Fleming directed this, and he also directed other bangers such as, get ready, The Craft, Easy A, Fired Up. He also more recently, he's worked on the Annie remake. So this guy knows his teen movies.
Yes, it sounds like it.
He knows what he's doing to make like a popular teen movie. He really hit all those marks, and the soundtrack in particular, I think, is very indicative of that, which I haven't really talked a whole lot about, but the soundtrack is fun, upbeat, very popular music of the time. They were clearly trying to be like, this is a teen movie, you will like it.
No, they definitely were big about the soundtrack too, because there was ads on the DVD for the soundtrack itself too. I think there was even a custom song that they did just for this movie too.
Didn't know that.
I think that there's a music video or something. Oh yeah, pretty much amazing.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense. But it's funny that you talked about the fashion, like the LA fashion, of the Mean Girls and everything, as being very indicative of the time. I don't know if I was just so unfashionable as a 13-year-old or whatever, but maybe it's just me looking back at it now, I don't know. It didn't feel normal to me, the things that the girls in LA were wearing. It didn't feel like something I would have seen in 2007. I think there were Ugg boots and big sunglasses, and so I picked up on that. But the rest of it, it was all earth tone colors, and there were, I guess, a lot of layers, but there was fur and just other things that it just was a little weird to me, and it just felt, I don't know,
let me rephrase that. It's less of what was actually popular in 2007 and more just like what the Disney Channel wardrobe department thought was
Oh.
popular in 2007. So, I mean, it looks like you're watching like Hannah Montana with the
Yeah.
type of
Okay.
outfits that they're
Yes.
wearing, you know?
Yes.
Not
Okay.
that I think that that was actually a good look, because I think that actually what Trish and Inga were wearing the whole time was actually pretty hideous, but that's besides the point. Yeah, with the
Yeah.
like chunky bracelets and way
Okay.
too many layers, and why does
Mhm.
everyone have 4 scarves on,
Yes,
and
the
like the like
scarves.
fringe on everything, and oh yeah, oh yeah,
Mhm. Mhm. The mini skirts with the tights and the boots and the
yeah,
yes. Yeah.
and everything is a different
The
clashing color and pattern. The
what were
weird
those hats
hats.
called? What were those hats called? They're not newsboy caps, are they?
No,
They're something
no,
else. They're like more bubbly.
I know what you're
like
talking
the
about.
brim. Anyway, yeah. Similar to that, but not quite that. But yeah.
Right,
Yeah. No,
right.
I thought that was weird. And I know it's
Mhm.
like supposed to we're just it's supposed to be very different from what Nancy is,
Right.
but it just didn't feel authentic.
No.
Didn't feel normal. Like I would not have seen a peer wearing something like that. But then again, I didn't grow up in LA. You know what I mean? Maybe it was really different in
We
LA.
wore jeans and t-shirts and flip-flops. Like
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. We did wear jeans tucked into Ugg boots a lot. Our flare jeans tucked into Ugg boots that we had to wrap around our
oh,
ankles
the flare
so that they
jeans.
didn't puff out at the top, and then they still puffed out at the top.
Mhm.
I mean, my God.
What a time.
What a time. But yeah, anyway.
Ponchos. So many ponchos back in
Oh,
2007.
I don't remember the ponchos.
I wore a
remember
poncho.
capris.
Uh-huh.
Culottes were a little bit earlier, probably, but I remember the
Bermuda
culottes.
shorts.
Oh no! Oh, that hurts. That hurts.
Yeah.
Oh, don't talk to me about Bermuda shorts.
I'm going to wear a lace poncho with some Bermuda shorts and Ugg boots. And one of those hats that has the sunglasses like on the hat itself.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. I remember I used to wear big, dark, heavy sunglasses like 24/7. I would wear them
Oh,
inside
same.
inside of buildings. I would wear them.
I had a pair that I loved,
Oh
and
my
thank
God.
goodness I lost them. Otherwise, I'd probably still be wearing them today, and it's not a good look.
They look like a bug. Like
Uh-huh. It's like most of your face is these
oh my God.
sunglasses.
You guys, this is painful. These are painful memories.
We're gonna look back at the skinny sunglasses of today in like 10 years and be like,
Okay,
"Ugh,
I
what
think
were
the
we
skinny
wearing?"
sunglasses are weird. You know what?
Yeah.
I don't like them. I mean, I get it. I get it's trendy and it's cute.
Mhm.
All of it's trendy and cute. I get it. But like, yeah, maybe we should just stick to like aviators or something classic like that.
Just a middle-sized sunglass,
Yes.
not massive, not the baby
Just
things.
one that just covers your whole eye, but not your eyebrows. Like-
Right.
yeah. Oh, anyway.
So that's the fashion.
The fashion. Something else I want to talk about. I want to talk about Ned and Nancy because this movie makes me feel a certain kind of way about Ned and Nancy.
Right? They're cute together in
They're
this.
so cute in this one. And now this doesn't reform my entire opinion, everyone, because again, I don't know that this is entirely accurate, but I love what they did with Ned and Nancy in this. I thought it was so sweet. He knows her so well, getting her a compass for her birthday. I love that. And I think there is that tension, right, of her, you know, going after mysteries and not really telling him how she feels about him. And he's kind of like, you know, looking for that, right? But I think it has to do with just Max Thoreau is so sweet, like such a sweet little baby. And the way that they look at each other, like there's a moment where she gets knocked to the floor and I think loses like consciousness or a while after the bomb goes off. And he like rushes over to her because he's so worried about her. And he like picks her up and they just like have this moment where they just like stare at each other like with like such like love and chemistry. It's like, oh my God. Like,
yeah.
So I think it really works. And I think part of that is also because Nancy is only 16 in this one. And so they're being portrayed as younger than typically we would see a Nancy portrayal. And so there's something about that that feels appropriate. Like she wouldn't probably be expressing her interest in him as easily at this age as she would or at a later age, or she wouldn't she wouldn't know necessarily that what she's doing could be kind of treating him like a doormat. Like she's not emotionally intelligent enough or emotionally confident enough to navigate that situation with ease. So the dynamic there, I think, makes a little bit more sense than it would in other things where it's like, okay, you guys, like, get it together, like figure out what you want, because clearly there's some miscommunication here. But because it feels young, it feels new, there's like a sincerity with that, with the way that they are kind of like tentative, and talking to each other about how they feel. They're not really sure of each other, but he really, really likes her and she really, really likes him.
It's so cute. He was a great cast for Ned, I think.
I don't think I thought that at first. I think because I was so stuck on Ned being a tall, dark, and handsome figure.
Oh, yeah.
That our blonde little Max Thoreau, I was like, that's not right. But I changed my mind. He's great.
Yeah, he is, yeah.
He's so funny. I think he's the understated funny. Understated comic relief is him.
That's what they should have had instead of Corky. Less
they should have brought him out
little
sooner.
kid falling down and more just Ned being Ned. So that's great. Yeah.
The part where she's leaving River Heights and Ned the other day told her about him having that dream about her falling for that guy from Smallville. And so as she's leaving, she goes, oh, and Ned, like, don't worry about that guy from Smallville. He's not my type. And he goes, you have a type? Like, all panicked.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Am I your type? Like,
oh,
no. So subtle comic relief, I think, in Ned's character. But yeah, let's talk about Corky. You don't want to?
No, definitely. I think we need to. I just don't like him, and I don't see, like I said, I've said everything I can say about him, really. I just don't really see why he was there. He seemed unnecessary.
I think part of it is that Nancy needs a sidekick, right? And I think that that's true always. Nancy needs somebody to play off of. And that's true in a lot of mystery stories. You see this all the time. It's a trope, right? They need a sidekick because otherwise it's really hard for the reader or the watcher or whatever to understand what's going on inside the detective's head. We need the detective to be able to explain it to someone so that we as the audience can read it.
I just don't know why it had to be him. It could have been Ned, Bess, or George easily without inventing this new weird character.
Well, I think it was a trope of the time. And I think you see this a lot when you look at Disney shows, Nickelodeon shows, of having a younger sidekick who is the comic relief character. So I think it was just indicative of that time. I think of, I don't know if I can come up with a good example. I don't know why what's popping out in my head to me is like Even Stevens, like Shia LaBeouf's character. I think Hannah Montana. She has not Hannah Montana. No, there's a little.
Yeah, no, she did.
There's a younger person, younger guy in Hannah Montana. So I think it was just of the time. But I think that was.
It felt unnecessary. It was just like only because like, oh, it's the thing, so we should do it.
Yes, because that's the formula of a teen movie, which is the choice that they made. But I think we talked about why. We don't like that choice. We think you could take it a little bit more seriously, but
I agree. She definitely needed a sidekick, just not this.
Yeah, I wish it had been Ned or even Inga. I feel like there could have been room for us to befriend Inga much more quickly. And kind of come together, and there could still be kind of like that frenemy tension from her, but we could still use her as the sidekick role.
Make her Deirdre, give us more of that. Like Deirdre was already a thing by this point. By the time this movie was out, we could. I mean, not that like the audience would have been expected to really know who Deirdre was from the Girl Detective series, but like having a dynamic that's more like that.
Well, I think about like Regina George from Mean Girls, right? Regina George, and how Katie comes in and she kind of takes on like this faux mentor role. And I can really see something like a dynamic like that between Inga and Nancy. So like Nancy shows up, and instead of like the lunchtime bullying, Corky hits on her weird scene, we could have Inga being like, you really need some help, don't you? Like, let me help you, you know? And that could have like developed from there. So she could have so Nancy, being sincere, can recognize like, yeah, you're right, I don't fit in here. Maybe I do need her help. Let me talk to her. And then Inga can be like, so what's even your deal? Like, what is this whole thing about? And, Nancy could talk about her interest in solving mysteries and why she's here. And then Inga could tell us, oh, Delia Draycott, oh, all this stuff. She can be our source on LA and Hollywood and all of this stuff. Whereas, yeah,
that would have been great.
Yeah,
so much better.
You gotta talk to us before you make a Nancy Drew movie. But yeah,
I like that a lot better because obviously Deirdre does have the crush on Ned. We know that's like a trope from the books.
That can still happen.
She's not just jealous of Nancy because of that, though. She's jealous of how much attention Nancy gets for her sleuthing because Deirdre also wants to do that. Not that we need like the rival detective character, but something like what you just said where she could go to Inga for help or something like that. I think that would have played a lot better than just like, I'm a mean girl who doesn't like your shoes.
Yes.
And I want to steal your cupcake.
And that would also be a way for us to engage much better and in this concept of like, what someone looks like versus who someone actually is, would be as if we could actually engage with Inga on a deeper level, right? Because then we could see like, yes, Inga is very much about appearances and all of this stuff, and Nancy is being more quote unquote sincere, but then we can have them meet together and we can resolve those issues organically. We don't have to have some weird fashion subplot that doesn't make any sense and doesn't actually tell the story that you should be telling.
And there's a little sense of redemption almost, and not just this like, oh yeah, we came around in the end to see that Nancy's cooler than we thought.
Well, I think the thing that bugs me so much about it is because it feels very anti the vision and the reality of what Nancy Drew is, right? Because Nancy Drew is being marketed towards young girls, is like, it's supposed to be, like propagating these like good qualities and these good character traits, right? Or like a certain spunkiness and impetuousness. And when we reduce this down to just being like a mean girl versus the not mean girl, it's like playing women or girls against each other. And at the end of this movie, we're only left with like, well, one's good and one's bad. And, there's only one right way to be a girl. And that's just not the message of what Nancy Drew is or should be, like there's lots of ways to be a girl. And Nancy is the example of that. So yeah, I just don't like the message, but
I don't either.
Oh well.
They should have talked to you first.
They should have talked to me first, Kori. We could have figured this all out. Anyway, no.
Why did we have to be in 7th grade instead of on the set of of Warner Brothers?
Seriously.
At the time, if only. Anyway.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. I have a bone to pick with the person who made the invitation. This is so minor. This is so stupid. You guys are laugh at me so much for saying this. I have a bone to pick with the person who made the invitations for Nancy's party. We get a close-up shot of Nancy's handwritten birthday invitations. Tell me why this is not written in calligraphy. Tell me why it's some shaky ass handwriting from some cursive font. I was like, Nancy's handwriting would never be this bad. She would know how to make a full calligraphy lettering, and if she didn't, it would be cute.
Yes.
I know this is a minor thing, but it's so annoying to me. When I saw that, I got so angry. I was like, this is not right. This is not right.
That is so funny.
Anyways.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I didn't even catch that, but that would have bothered me as well if I had.
It was very quick, to be fair, and the only reason why I noticed is probably because I'm neurotic, but yeah. Yeah. No, I think overall, I really like it. I really enjoy this movie. I know I really loved it when I was a kid, and I think actually, I don't know if it was my favorite at the time, but it ranked very highly for me. I think back then, and I think probably still today, my favorite Nancy Drew movie, full stop, is the Maggie Lawson
Yeah.
made for TV Nancy Drew movie. It's so good. It's so good. I love Maggie Lawson. I love it so much. It's just unbeatable in my opinion. But yeah, but this, I think it's a fun way to spend an hour and a half.
Well, in 2002, which is when the Maggie Lawson one came out, that's like right at the peak of when I first discovered Nancy Drew and really got obsessed with the games. So I think that that's why I love it so much, because it came out right as I would like. That's all I could think about at the time was Nancy Drew books, games, and so this was a little bit later. Although of course we were still the target audience for it.
Yeah. I think there's something to say too about watching like Maggie Lawson when we were like, what, 8 years old or something, as opposed to who is obviously was older than us at the time, portraying an 18-year-old Nancy instead of a 16-year-old Nancy, than us watching someone who was much closer to us in age at the time, Emma Roberts. Yeah, I think she was our age. And so like watching Maggie Lawson was a much different experience, and like looking up to like this person in awe in the same way that I looked up to Nancy, as opposed to a Nancy Drew that's a little bit more relatable probably to us. It's a different experience,
Right. Absolutely.
And I think, there's something a little bit more grand and exciting about not relating quite so much, but instead seeing someone as like a role model or a paragon. So
I just think, having already loved the Maggie Lawson movie so much, I kind of went into it with those expectations. And went into this movie with that. It's like, it wasn't quite there for me, just because I had already had those preconceived ideas. But other than that, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think the only thing we didn't really talk about is the cover art on this, which I think is just such an iconic poster that we might as well just mention it really, really quickly.
Yeah. So the iconic, it's the DVD cover, but it's also a very widely distributed poster for this Nancy Drew movie. We see Nancy Drew at the top, and we see Emma Roberts standing full center. We get not a full picture of her, but like from the knees up. So we get mostly all of her in a very cute vintage outfit, holding a magnifying glass. She's wearing plaid and a plaid headband, something that is very appropriate and typical to something that you would see in probably a revised text artwork piece.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then in the background, in another magnifying glass, we see a large magnifying glass. We see a bunch of our side characters, right? We see Ned, Corky, Inga, and Trish, I think. Is that all? Can't really tell.
That's all that's there. Yeah.
So it's cute. What do you feel about the purple? I don't like the purple.
It's fine. I like that they did the yellow.
Yeah.
I do like later in the show, or she's wearing this same outfit, and I think at the first scene of the movie, and we do also see she's got a matching raincoat that's like made out of the same material, which I love, because other outfits, like, they use the same fabric in like the sleuth kit. So it's the exact same. Like, I just love how they made everything custom like that. So it's not the color scheme I expect, but I think it looks good.
Yeah. I agree. But I just feel like, I don't know, with Nancy Drew, why wouldn't you go classic? Why wouldn't you do blue?
Right.
Blue and yellow. But I don't know.
I do think that the brooch she has, the magnifying glass with ND inside of it, I think that that'd be cute if you were like making a doll of Nancy Drew for the doll to wear that. But I think that it's a little conceited for Nancy herself to wear something with her own. I don't know. Maybe that's a reach, but
no, overall,
that's my only real complaint about her wardrobe.
I love her costuming.
Outfits.
I think it's great. I think it's a very cute idea to make her look more 1950s than everybody else. I get it. But I agree. Sometimes it's a little weird sometimes.
A little cheesy almost.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that's all I got about it. Anything else?
No, I don't have anything else. Flashlight score?
Ooh, I want to give it a 4. I almost want to give it a 4.5. I can't decide.
Interesting.
Because again, I know I did make a lot of critiques about it at the beginning.
Yeah.
But it is truly good, despite the amount of, I don't want to say complaints. They're not complaints, but
Right.
I'll give it a 4.
Yeah, I agree. I think I give it a 4 because it's really fun to watch. It's really enjoyable. And yeah, there's a lot of problems with it, I think. But I think there's a lot of problems with a lot of movies from this time. And so I think it probably just falls into issues of the genre, you know what I mean? And of the time period, like teen movie from that time period. And so I don't think it's necessarily specific to Nancy Drew as so much, and to the movie itself, as just a flaw of what they were emulating, you know? So yeah, I think ultimately as a Nancy Drew representation, I think it scores pretty high for me because I think they clearly did their research. It's very familiar feeling.
Yeah.
Like we get it. They have all those, I'm only going as fast as the law allows type of quotes. So it feels like Nancy. It just feels like it was maybe made by somebody who didn't like her, which
or at least maybe didn't like her fans, her audience.
Maybe.
I feel like maybe there's a little bit of that going on, but
yeah.
Thank goodness for Jen Fisher, who went in and made some of those last minute edits to make it feel just that much more like Nancy, because I think that made probably a big difference.
Yeah. Thank you, Jen, for your contribution.
Yeah. How would you say it ranks against the other movies for you, the other Nancy Drew movies?
Okay, so we got the Benita Granville movies. We've got the 2002 Maggie Lawson movie and the Sophia Lillis movie. Oh, okay. Well, obviously, I already said that I like the 2002 one better. So that's my number 1.
Yeah. Okay.
Maggie Lawson's better for me.
I'd agree with that.
I like the Benita Granville movies as they are, but because they're movies from the 1930s, it's hard to connect with them.
They're
because
very
it's just
different.
it's just a time period that I didn't live in. It's hard to relate to that. So I almost kind of like want to throw them out because they're good for what they are. And I'm sure at the time, like they were great movies, but it's just so different. It's just such a different type of movie.
And they were so well loved at the time too.
Yeah.
I almost have to make that comparison because of how successful this movie was. I mean, it was from actually, I think this may have been the first and only time that Nancy Drew's name was like commonly on the marquee of a movie theater across the US, because this was such a big deal.
Yeah.
And they weren't quite that big of a deal in the 30s, but they were really, really successful, and they were in theaters for so long that you have to count them as like, yeah, for their audience at the time, they were really well loved.
Yeah. But if it's me, probably I'm going to rank them last for me.
Yeah.
But so 2002, but then it's in between. I don't know.
Do you like the 2019 movie better than this movie? It's hard.
I don't know, Kori. Stop doing this to me, Kori.
Oh, sorry. You don't have to rank them.
Tearing out my heart. No, I don't know. Yeah, it's so hard because I think they're different things that I really like about each of them. I think this movie ranks higher than the Sophia Lillis movie because I think it's just more enjoyable overall. It's more fun to watch.
Yeah, I'd say I had the same ranking. And Benita Granville last, definitely.
Yeah. But there are so many good things about the Sophia Lillis movie, so many things that I love about it. And so many, I think, better choices that I think that they made in comparison to this movie even.
Better Carson.
Yes, so that's so interesting that like even though I think that like message-wise, moral-wise, structurally-wise, I think that I appreciate the choices made in the Sophia Lillis Nancy Drew movie than I do in this movie. I like the Emma Roberts movie ultimately better.
Okay, that's fair.
But I think that that's just because the director, like the writers, like all of it, they were very successful, knew exactly what they were doing in making a really entertaining movie. Like this was their job and they were really good at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
And maybe it is just because like this again, we were the target audience for the time. Maybe that's why this is such a big hit with our generation specifically, and maybe why we've gotten so many requests to do this movie, but it's just because it's so big with our age group.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's fun. It's good.
Yep.
I like it. Yeah.
Love it. Love having something that is like such a standout. That like, yes, this generation loves Nancy, but it's like this movie that everyone was really, really in love with at the time.
Yeah.
So it's great.
It is very different. It's very different than all of the other Nancy Drew stuff that we have. You know, different than the other movies, different obviously than the TV shows at all, different than any of the books. It's just really different.
It's interesting. Yeah, it took this for me to realize that all the TV shows they feel a little bit more old or older, you know, that Nancy's older than any of the movies, which is very, well, besides the Maggie Lawson movie, which she's intentionally supposed to be a college student there. But yeah, otherwise, I think she's supposed to be like 16 in all of the other movies, isn't she?
Yep.
Which is kind of interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why we can't have a movie. And I mean, even the Maggie Lawson movie, that was a TV movie. It wasn't, you know, it didn't have a cinematic release or anything. So, and it was before streaming. So, yeah, why can't we have a Nancy Drew movie with an older Nancy Drew?
With an 18-year-old Nancy, yeah.
It's interesting. Interesting. Anyway, food for thought, regular Drews. Let us know what you think. You know, message us on Instagram. Email us at regularnancydrew.com. Tell us how much you loved the movie or how much you hated it. Love to hear it.
And Warner Brothers, give us a call next time in whatever, like 10 years from now when you're getting ready to do the next one. We'll help you make that 18-year-old Nancy and get her
available.
right.
We're available. So, you know.
Becky has endless plot ideas that are all fantastic. So
I really do.
Yeah.
Just stick me in a writer's room.
There we go.
Anyway, yeah. Okay. Well, Kori, are you excited?
Speaking of the TV shows.
Yeah.
How could I not be excited? Are you excited?
I'm so excited because it's been so long since I have seen this. And I bet a lot of you listeners, a lot of you regular viewers probably don't even really know about this. I think it's a very well hidden, very well kept Nancy Drew secret. It took me a long time to find out about this, like a long time ago, of course, but like it was just not something that was just available to me.
Right.
And so we are going to be covering the 1995 TV show, Nancy Drew. It's just called Nancy Drew, yeah.
It's just called Nancy Drew, yeah. Starring Tracy Ryan.
With Tracy
as our
Ryan
Nancy.
as Nancy. We're going to be covering episodes 1 and 2 because they're just short little half-hour episodes. So we're going to be covering 2 of them, and I am very excited.
Yes. I'm
yeah.
looking forward to rewatching them again because they are fun. It's only like 13 episodes in the season, and because they're so short, you could probably just binge the whole season in one day if you really wanted to. So I'm looking forward to it because it's a fun one. It's very different.
Very different.
It's got its differences from anything else you might expect, but it definitely does have its merits. So I'm excited.
Most notably, Nancy Drew has dark hair.
Very
different.
Very different. I love Bess and George in this one, and Ned is Ned in this one. I think that the portrayal of Ned in this one, specifically the Nancy-Ned dynamic, is great.
Okay. It's been a while since I've seen it. I watched it back before we ever did this podcast, back before, gosh, I was probably in high school when I watched it for the first time. Yeah, so it's been a long time, and I don't think I've watched it since then. So
I don't even know if we'll get to... I watched this all about a year ago when we were prepping for our adaptations history episode. So I don't remember exactly, but I want to say Ned's only in like 3 or 4 of the episodes. And I don't know,
Perfect.
I can't remember when he shows up, if it's one of the first 2 episodes or not. So we may not even get to his plot line, but yeah. So we'll see.
So exciting.
Basically, she's too busy for him, and it's like, go away, Ned. I'll talk to you later. And so that's the whole thing in the show.
Accurate.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
So join us then, y'all.
Yes, join us then, regular Drews. We will see you in a couple weeks. Thank you for listening to Regular Nancy Drew. Email us at regularnancydrew@gmail.com. If you like this episode, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
You can also follow us on Instagram at Regular Nancy Drew and Twitter at RegularND.
You can also support us on Patreon. Patrons at the $3 level vote on upcoming episode topics and get exclusive access to our Scoop Sesh series.
And all patrons receive early access to each episode as well as weekly bonus content.
And to all you regular Drews out there,
Thanks for listening.